Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Bitter Pill. Today I want to talk about something that's become increasingly problematic in recent months or in the last couple of years, and that's the censorship that's been going on in social media like Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. I'm wearing my Tulsi Gabbard shirt today because, although I definitely had some criticisms of her, I did critically support her during the Democratic primaries because she had the strongest stance of anybody in Congress against censorship. She was a big supporter of Julian Assange and introduced a lot of legislation to rein in the censorship that was going on and promote greater diversity of viewpoints in the mainstream media, such as reintroducing the fairness doctrine. But anyway, on to my topic. I wanted to point out the contrast between what Google, the parent corporation of YouTube, and YouTube have said about freedom of expression on their as far as their search results and on the platform that they own, YouTube. Google CEO Sundar Pichai testified before Congress, before the House, back in December of 2018, so a couple of years ago. And it was a long testimony, but one of the things that he claimed was that YouTube and Google didn't try to favor any particular viewpoint, and that they tried to allow a diversity of political viewpoints within their platforms and within the search results that the Google search engine turned up. And you said that the only things that Google or YouTube censored were hate speech and speech that promoted violence. Now, granted, that already is pretty broad. What exactly is hate speech? How do we define that? But since then, YouTube has introduced a number of much more specific restrictions on content on their platforms, which they seem to apply rather loosely, using computer algorithms to flag people's content on YouTube as being problematic according to their various rules or terms of service, even though it may not be. And just within the last few days, YouTube financially deplatformed a whole bunch of indie media accounts, left-leaning, generally speaking, YouTube channels that produce content that promotes a progressive or left-leaning point of view. Among them, the Convo Couch and the Progressive Soapbox of Jamal Thomas, News to Share, which is Ford Fisher's news site, Frank Analysis, another independent media site. And so they demonetized them. What does that mean? Well, basically, if you have a channel on YouTube and you have over a certain number of subscribers, I think it's 1,000, then you can get a portion of the ad revenue that's generated when YouTube plays videos. And you can also get contributions from contributors during live chats called super chats. During live streams, excuse me. And you can have memberships and accept donations from people through YouTube. So, all of that was taken away for progressive commentators Graham Elwood, the progressive soapbox Jamal Thomas, the Convo Couch, Fiorella and Craig, Frank Analysis, and various others. They all received notifications worded identically from YouTube that their videos were no longer permitted to earn money through the platform's various monetization features, as has Ford Fischer, a respected freelancer who films U.S. political demonstrations. No explanation has been offered for this decision beyond the vague claim that, quote, your channel is not in line with our YouTube partner program policies due to, quote, harmful content. By the way, this article's by Caitlin Johnstone, who's a great left-wing journalist from Australia who comments a lot on, or really mostly on, things that are going on in the United States, the global hegemon among the world's countries. But you should definitely follow her if you don't already. Anyway, like all large online platforms, she goes on to say, YouTube's appeals process is notoriously opaque and unaccountable. These accounts could remain demonetized for months or forever without any clear explanation at all. Ford Fischer, who's had his account demonetized before, said that last time his account was left demonetized for 7 months before YouTube reversed its decision. And throughout all that time, and I hadn't heard of him before, but apparently he's a pretty prominent independent journalist who has a big following. So there was enormous political pressure put on YouTube to reverse their decision. There was mainstream media coverage and Rolling Stone and so forth. And it still took 7 months for them to change their decision. And they really never gave him a clear indication of why they made this decision. Other folks who were demonetized a few days ago included Graham Elwood, who said no super chats, no ad revenue, no YouTube premium money. I have a call with my lawyers later today. Jamal Thomas, a progressive soapbox, said, you guys have destroyed my channel without legit explanation as to why. No videos are given. No videos cited that they claimed violated their terms of service. And frankly, there is literally zero harmful content on my channel. This is a radically bad error that needs to be corrected. And if you've ever watched Jamal Thomas's videos, you know that he's a very mild-mannered, soft-spoken guy who just simply gives straight facts or opinions backed up by facts. And it would be bizarre to think that there's any harmful content on his channel. And the disturbing thing about all of these deplatformings is that YouTube didn't really give any indication to the various people they deplatformed what exactly they had supposedly done wrong. Like which videos out of perhaps hundreds or thousands of videos YouTube's algorithms apparently found problematic. As Jonathan Mayorka from Convo Couch put it, no specific video or subject was named. Nobody receiving these notifications, Caitlin says, appears to have any idea of what is meant by harmful or controversial, or they say content that focuses on controversial issues and is harmful to viewers in their notice. So no indication of what's meant by harmful or controversial or why YouTube is mentioning them in the same breath as though these two things are connected or synonymous in some way. And Caitlin goes on to point out why this is such a big deal, that these channels were financially deplatformed by YouTube. She says, speaking for myself, I can say with absolute certainty that I would not be able to create content at anywhere near the pace I do were I not making enough money from it to do it full time. life is far too demanding with far too much else going on for me to be able to maintain anything like daily output. Being financially deplatformed and having to get another job would force me down to an essay a week in my spare time, if that. And certainly those of you who follow this channel know that because I myself have a regular job, I only put out videos every so often, maybe once or twice a week, because I just don't have the time to do it more often than that. But these people are working full time as progressive commentators and journalists on YouTube. So if they, I think that Graham Elwood mentioned that something like a third of his income had suddenly been cut out by being deplatformed by YouTube. And granted, folks have other platforms that they frequent, such as Rockfin and Odyssey, and you should definitely check out those sites if you haven't already, because they don't have any ads and they give 100% of their revenue to the producers of their content, unlike YouTube, which takes out a big chunk, even if they are not financially deplatforming people. But for people who are doing this full time, not me, but people like Graham or Fee and Pasta, the Convo Couch, and so forth, financial deplatforming is censorship. People were given an opportunity to devote themselves to the vocation of creating media outside the gatekeeping apparatus of billionaire news institutions, which is arguably the single most important vocation, Caitlin says, that anyone could give themselves in our world right now. They built their lives around their ability to do this. Now it's being ripped away from them. Their literal jobs are being taken away. Hopefully that won't be the case, because either this decision will get reversed eventually, or people will be able to transition to making a living through other means. But this is a really big blow. And YouTube's, I think, rash decision to crack down on left independent media like this has resulted in mainstream media coverage to some extent. So Fox News had a great article yesterday, YouTube's dangerous crackdown on independent journalists. It defies all logic and reason, they titled it. The clear goal is to disempower alternative media, independent journalist Matt Taibi told Fox News. Ford Fischer, one of the people who had been demonetized, just announced, I think late yesterday, that his appeal was successful. His YouTube account was remonetized, although the video that he took on January 6th at the Capitol protest has not yet been restored. It was taken down. And all he did was shoot video footage of events in the during the Capitol riots. He didn't provide any commentary on it. And yet his footage was still policy violative, YouTube said. So what they told him was, we wanted to let you know that our team reviewed your content and we think it violates our spam, deceptive practices, and scam policy. We realize this may be disappointing news, but it's our job to make sure YouTube is a safe place for all. And they sent the same email to all the commentators that they deplatformed at the same time. And the email went on to say, content that advances false claims that widespread fraud, errors, or glitches change the outcome of the U.S. 2020 presidential election is not allowed on YouTube. And again, all he was doing was showing video footage of the Capitol riots. He wasn't promoting any false claims about the election or anything. He was just showing people protesting. Now, of course, the people who were protesting were there because they falsely the evidence suggests, as I've covered in other videos, they falsely are claiming that Trump had the election stolen from him, but Fisher himself certainly did not make that claim. And Fisher pushed back on their claim that he was providing these false claims supposedly without any context. They said this video was removed because it didn't include countervailing views or sufficient context to the claims made in the footage. And Fischers' response was that he had provided context merely with the title, "Crowd Reacts to Trump January 6th Speech Ahead of Capitol Insurgency." And he pointed out that numerous mainstream media networks had picked up his footage and shown it in their coverage of the Capitol riots. And they never had any of their videos taken down, not even the videos that they had gotten from Fisher. Same thing happened to, although they weren't demonetized, the Status Quo YouTube channel run by Jordan Chariton and Jen Dies also had footage from the January 6th protests taken down by YouTube. Their footage was also picked up by numerous mainstream media outlets and broadcast to their audiences, and nothing ever happened to these big corporate outlets. So Fisher is also, despite his very politically neutral stance, had difficulties with Facebook and Twitter as well as YouTube. And I won't go into what happened there, but with those other outlets. But he said, despite the problems he's had with those other tech giants, YouTube continues to be his biggest obstacle. YouTube used to be for independent content creators primarily, right? It used to be about democratizing. Everybody has a voice. Like, that was the idea of YouTube. That's what I love, or loved, I guess, about YouTube. That's why I like it still, at least for that principle. The Google executive that I mentioned earlier had made that claim in his testimony that we want to give everybody, regardless of their political point of view, the opportunity to freely express themselves. And, that's not happening. So Fisher goes on to say, it seems like YouTube has basically started to just be a platform for the corporations that you could watch on cable TV anyway. As you may know, Google changed its algorithm to supposedly favor quote-unquote reputable news sources. So when you do a search now, you're far more likely to get back results for mainstream media outlets like CNN and Fox and so forth, and much less likely to get results, or they'll be farther down in your list of search results for independent journalists. As they've been doing that, they have acknowledged that they're squeezing down the amount of viewership that goes into independent content creators, he adds. The way they would describe it is that they are shifting viewership towards reputable sources, quote unquote, as I said before. And that's their way of saying, we're giving priority to mainstream media when you search for stuff. But I think that the fact that major news outlets can live stream the same things that I filmed, and mine gets deleted, and theirs gets ads put on it, and they get revenue from that, of course. Well, I think that indicates to me YouTube is serving corporations rather than small businesses and individual users. So Matt Taibi, who used to be a journalist with Rolling Stone and is now working independently on Substack, has advocated in the past on Fisher's behalf. When he was censored before, or deplatformed, demonetized before, recently, he was interviewed by Fox News for this article. He said, what YouTube is doing now is more drastic, because it's making even raw footage from independent outlets off limits or taboo, at least on those outlets' channels, even if the same footage is used by other mainstream media outlets. The clear goal, Matt says, is to disempower alternative media. The end game here is to force all content to be sifted through the filter of larger outlets. He says America is moving away from a free press to a, quote, journalistic licensing system operated by big tech, and you can only do the job if you're part of a larger structure. Their goal is to make the press part of the political establishment rather than a check on it. And so they go on to interview several of the other outlets that have been censored. And another instance of censorship against both Status Quo and Ford Fischers channel, which I forget the name of it, was that they both covered a gun rights rally that took place at the Virginia State Capitol on January 18th, where basically they were just showing footage of that event for the most part, but they had their footage taken down by YouTube because it supposedly violated some sort of policy against showing guns on social media, which is ridiculous. Because it was a peaceful rally where people had their guns, but they weren't using them. Certainly, they just had them, and they're merely filming this rally. And again, the footage was captured, was used by several news organizations, including CNN, MSNBC, NBC, CBS, ABC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Associated Press. All of this footage captured by Status Quo was used by all these outlets, or some of it, and so they continue to be able to use it, and yet Status Quo, Jordan and Jen's outlet, had their video taken down. And it was eventually restored, but then just Tuesday, 3 days ago, they, like Ford Fischer, had their video footage of the January 6th riots in the Capitol and on Capitol Hill taken down, even though, as I said, it was licensed out to all these mainstream media outlets who didn't have their footage taken down. So, it's really quite unfair. Cheriton called YouTube's actions alarming and dangerous and is urging mainstream media outlets to condemn the onslaught of censorship against leftist channels. So far, Fox is the only mainstream outlet that's done so that I've seen. It's part of a broader trend by Google/YouTube to purge their platform of independent and progressive channels their advertisers don't view favorably. They are doing it under the guise of removing extremist right-wing content, Cheriton told Fox News. It's puzzling to see our historic footage that has been used by dozens of domestic and foreign news networks removed when we were covering the events, not advocating or advancing false claims of election fraud. It is corporate censorship by YouTube and other platforms to appease corporate advertisers. And they go on to interview several other outlets that were censored. I'll just quote from one of them. Franco from Frank Analysis said, "It makes it impossible for people to become successful if they're starting from scratch. Me and the other media content creators that were demonetized deserve to be remonetized." And the reason he talks about making it impossible to be successful if they're starting from scratch is that his channel is fairly new and only recently became popular. As I interviewed Franco a few episodes ago, and we talked about how he had only a few months ago been about where I am in terms of number of subscribers. I think I'm at roughly 140, and now he's suddenly grown to about 3,000 because he's doing this full time and regularly giving people good content. And doing a good job of publicizing it. So, a lot of people have flocked to his channel, but, He's just starting out. He's only been monetized, he said, for 2 months, and then all of a sudden, boom, they took it away. And the other thing that they did to Franco that I should mention was, and I think they did to some other people too, is that he had gotten contributions from his audience, super chats they're called, during live streams, and that this was before they demonetized his channel. So the money was supposed to go to him, and yet YouTube just took the money. Franco said, hey, YouTube, refund my audience. They were donating their money to me, not you. YouTube robbed my audience of their money because I didn't receive a single cent for their super chats. YouTube just kept the money and also didn't refund the audience. So they're being outright thieves. When asked about potential solutions to social media censorship, News to Share, that's his channel, Fisher, expresses skepticism that government is the answer. Instead, he believes enough people need to speak up so that YouTube and other platforms feel that it's going to damage their business if they demonetize him. Hashtag demonetize YouTube, folks. Hit them where it hurts. I myself just canceled my YouTube premium subscription, which was $12 a month, and gave me ad-free videos as well as access to all their music for that fee. But I canceled that, and I also canceled the $2 a month I was paying them to store my videos on Google Drive. And I encourage folks to reconsider any financial ties they have or support they're giving to these platforms that are censoring people. Because it's not fair. So Fisher believes enough people need to speak up so that YouTube and other platforms feel it's going to damage their business if they demonetize him. And in a direct appeal to YouTube, Fisher told Fox News that he wished an actual human being would speak to him before taking such drastic actions. What I would like to say to YouTube is just come to talk to people before taking away someone's entire livelihood, or a big chunk of their livelihood. Before taking down content, they should just actually reach out to the content creator and say, hey, we have some concerns about your channel. It's deeply hurtful to me that they just sent an automated form letter, same letter was sent to everybody, and say, oh, that's part of your livelihood, it's gone, good luck, and make it hard to speak to a human there. So I should add that although I have a small channel at this point, only 140 subscribers or so, and I get around 50 views on most of my videos, sometimes more, sometimes less. I too received a letter from Google at about the same time as all these other people, and here's what it said. Hi, the Bitter Pill. We wanted to let you know our team reviewed your content and we think it violates our spam, deceptive practices, and scams policy. We know you may not have realized this was a violation of our policies, so we're not applying a strike to your channel. However, we have removed the following content from YouTube. Video, What Can Exit Polls Tell Us About the 2020 Election? Bitter Pill episode 37. We realize this may be disappointing news, but it's our job to make sure YouTube is a safe place for all. If you think we've made a mistake, you can appeal this decision. You'll find more details below. What our policy says: content that advances false claims that widespread fraud, errors, or glitches changed the outcome of the U.S. 2020 presidential election is not allowed on YouTube. So they're telling me I made false claims about the 2020 election. Well, what did I actually claim in that episode? Well, what I did, because I'm a social scientist who thus knows how to statistically analyze data, is I collected data on the exit polls from the November 2020 presidential election and compared those data to the actual results from the election. And what I found was that Joe Biden, who won the election by a significant margin, something like 4.5% in the final tally, so it was close but not super close. that he did more poorly in terms of actual election results than the exit polls suggested that he would. And conversely, by about 1.4%. Conversely, Donald Trump overperformed. He outperformed what the exit polls said he would get in terms of percentage of votes by 2.3%. So all I'm doing there is just doing my job as a scientist and reporting actual data showing that there's a possibility that there were some shenanigans by the Republicans, which isn't to say that there weren't also attempts to rig the vote count and so forth by the Democrats, but the data suggests that overwhelmingly, if anybody did that, it was the Republicans who did that, because this is a pretty big miss for an exit poll. Overall, Biden underperformed the national exit poll by almost 2%. So, that's all I said. It was just simply reporting this indisputable fact that Biden underperformed and Trump overperformed the exit polls, suggesting the possibility, which, I mean, that's what exit polls are used for. They're used to sort of raise a red flag as to whether there's a possibility that there's some sort of fishy business with an election. So, these results raise a suspicion that there was something going on here, that the election results weren't on the up and up. But, of course, in no way is saying that Biden underperformed the exit polls and Trump overperformed the exit polls, when, in fact, Biden won. And I said exactly that. Biden won legitimately. That's not saying that... that's not making a false claim that widespread fraud, errors, or glitches change the outcome of the presidential election. I never said that. So, I wrote them back, I appealed it, and I said, hello, you claim that my video violated your spam deceptive practices and scams policy. You say that content that advances false claims that widespread fraud, errors, or glitches change the outcome of the U.S. 2020 presidential election is not allowed on YouTube. But I made no such claim. I claimed that Biden legitimately won the election and presented statistical analyses that showed incontrovertibly that Biden got fewer votes and Trump more votes than the exit polls predicted they would. I'm a social scientist trained in statistical analysis and presented findings based on real data showing that Biden, who won, may possibly have won by more than the official vote count. There was no deception and were no false claims in this video. Watch it and see for yourself. So, I pulled a scientist card there and, just pointed out I was reporting facts that I had discovered. And, frankly, much to my surprise, I got a letter back, or an email back the same day from YouTube. It said, hello, the Bitter Pill. We have reviewed your appeal for the following content. Video, what can exit polls tell us about the 2020 election? Bitter Poll episode 37. After taking another look, we can confirm that your content does not violate our community guidelines. Well, I don't think they took a look in the first place. Their computer algorithm, I'm guessing, flagged my content based on things like the title and the description, that it was violating their rules. But anyway, they say, after taking another look, we can confirm that your content does not violate our community guidelines. Thanks for your patience while we review this appeal. Our goal is to make sure content doesn't violate our community guidelines, which are very broad and obviously inaccurately enforced, so that YouTube can be a safe place for all. Talking about the outcome of the elections and possibly questioning whether the election results were accurate is somehow unsafe or dangerous, apparently. Sometimes we make mistakes trying to get it right. Sometimes you make mistakes because you don't try to get it right, to be honest. We're sorry for any frustration our mistake caused you, and we appreciate your letting us know. How this affects your channel, to make this right, your content has been reinstated. If you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to us here. So, okay, so my story, had a happy ending. I got temporarily censored. I made a big stink about it on Twitter, and wound up getting a few more views on my video as a result of that. Once it was restored, so it worked out okay for me. It worked out okay for Ford Fischer. But what about all these other guys? And I should mention Nico House of the MCSC network also was demonetized that day. He didn't announce it in time to make Fox News' article, but so there were at least half a dozen, I think, people who just suddenly, just like that, had a big source of their revenue cut off. And these are all people, not, I'm not, but they all are people who are doing this full time. That's their living, because really that's the only way you can put out content on an almost daily basis. Sometimes more than one video a day with some of these folks, and they often have live streams that go a couple of hours. So that takes up, basically, that and doing research to create the videos, that takes the time that a full-time job would otherwise take. So it's a big fucking deal when you have your revenue from doing this cut out. You may eventually be faced with having to take a job somewhere else and being forced to cut back on the amount of journalism that you can do. So, again, like I said, one solution to this problem is to seek out other channels to watch, or other platforms to watch content on, such as Rockfin, such as Odyssey. I'll put links to those in the video description. Creators can put content on those other outlets, as most of these people are already doing. Folks who watch can try to support them over there. And, we need to just keep raising a fuss about this. We've seen several examples of people such as Ford Fischer, such as myself, and probably others, being able to successfully fight back against the censorship binge. And that doesn't mean that things aren't going to get worse in terms of censorship by corporate media of independent and particularly left-leaning journalists or commentators. But we do have the power to fight back, and we need to do that as much as we can. And hopefully YouTube won't take this video down based on some bogus misinterpretation of their rules. We'll see. So anyway, thanks for watching. Please like and share and subscribe to the channel, and comment on what you think about all this in the comment section below, and support independent media any way you can. All right, thanks. I'll see you next time.